It was one of those nights when everything seemed abnormally quiet, as if it were the quiet before an unexpected storm. The only sound in our peaceful suburban house was the ticking of the clock, and the breeze outside hardly moved. I sat by myself in our living room, not really paying attention to the show that was on, but looking blankly at the flickering TV. Lost in the murky labyrinth of mistrust and doubt that had been gnawing at me for months, my thoughts were a million miles away. The culmination of it all occurred tonight. Regardless of my desire for it to, I had wanted to be incorrect about one thing, and tonight I was going to prove it. I had been married to my wife for 10 years. 10 years of recollections, highs and lows, and what I believed to be unwavering trust. We fell in love right away after meeting in college. She fulfilled every desire I had ever had for a companion. Funny, intelligent, and kind. Together we created a life that I believed would endure forever. However, it seems that I had deluded myself into believing that everlasting was a myth. At first, the changes were hardly perceptible. She started going out late more frequently, justifying it with extra work, meetings, or get-togethers with pals. For a long time, I wanted to believe her. I had total faith in her. But then there were the minor details, the nearly undetectable changes in her conduct, that started to bother me. She began wearing a new perfume that I had never seen on a woman before. She would constantly turn her phone away from me and check it more often while she was out, grinning at texts she never acknowledged. Her love for me became aloof, as if she were emotionally distant yet physically present. I spent months trying to persuade myself that my fears were deceiving me and that I was being overly suspicious. I had no reason to accuse her of anything, because we had always been so close. However, I had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. Living with a shadow that was never far from me yet difficult to ignore was like that. Then, one evening, everything fell apart. It began rather casually. She informed me that she and a few of her coworkers were going out to supper. An ordinary occurrence that has grown more common in recent months. My stomach was in knots, but I recall nodding absently and acting like I was fine with it. This was not the first time she had done it. In fact, quite a few times. Tonight, though, was different. Before she went, there was something in the way she gazed at me. There was something that gave me the chills. I took her phone as soon as she left the house. I only needed the chance that she had forgotten to bring it with her this time. When I unlocked it, my hands trembled. Like a heavy weight, dread is accumulating in my stomach. I prayed I wouldn't discover anything as I browsed through her texts. Yet there it was, a lengthy series of communications sent between her and a man named Jason, whose name had never been mentioned in our years of dating. Sweet nothings, private arrangements, and assurances that they would see each other that evening were all included in the texts. I recall feeling as though I had been struck in the stomach. As I read on, my hands shook and my heart thumped in my chest. I had underestimated how bad it would be. This wasn't a passing fling or an isolated error. She had been secretly seeing him for months, acting as though nothing was wrong, while she established a new life with another guy. I felt like screaming. I wanted to crush her phone into 1,000 pieces and chuck it across the room. Instead, the weight of the betrayal immobilized me as I sat there. I was having trouble breathing. I had committed to love and cherishing this lady for the rest of my life, but she was living a lie. She went out with him tonight as well. She probably held his hand, laughed, and kissed him the way she used to kiss me. I had no idea what to do. I had the want to rush out of the home, find her, confront her, and demand answers immediately. However, a more significant portion of me felt numb. I required additional time to reflect, to analyze, to comprehend how things had gone so wrong. So I remained. I waited for her to get home and to see whether she would deceive me once more in the house that felt so empty all of a sudden. The hours passed slowly. I was unable to concentrate. Unable to remain still. Time seemed to be passing more slowly each time I glanced at the clock. Even after midnight had passed, she had not returned. I had a million ideas racing through my head. Was she now with him? Were they laughing at my lack of knowledge as they were together in some romantic location? Was she at all guilty, or had she come to the conclusion that I was no longer important? I finally heard her car come into the driveway at approximately 1 in the morning. My chest pounded with my heart. The moment of truth has arrived. As I waited for her to enter the room, I sat up, feeling tight. I heard her footsteps on the porch a little while later, and then the front door opened with a gentle click. She was obviously in a high mood as she entered, singing to herself. Unaware that I was there, I watched in the shadows as she put her keys on the bar and took off her coat. She appeared content, almost glowing. I felt ill to my stomach because of that. After everything she had done, how could she still be smiling when she returned to me? Then she noticed me. As soon as she realized I was in the living room, her eyes widened in surprise and her grin vanished. "Oh," she remarked in a tremulous voice. "You're still awake." At first I didn't answer. I simply gazed at her as my feelings raged inside of me. She shifted beneath my eyes, obviously uneasy, but she was making an effort to remain calm. With a strained voice, she said, "I was just out with the girls, for that job thing, you know." Instead of confronting her immediately, I just got up and approached her, even though I could see the lie written all over her face and hear it in her voice. As I got closer, she stiffened as if she realized something wasn't right but wasn't sure what it was. "Are you all right?" Her voice trembled a little as she asked. I didn't respond. Rather, I took her phone out of my pocket and raised it to her. When she understood what I had done, her eyes widened in fear. With my pulse racing with rage, I yanked the phone away from her as she went for it. I responded, my voice low and shaking with anger, "I know everything. I noticed the messages. I am aware that you have been unfaithful to me." Her eyes filled with terror and her face turned pale. She stumbled. "I can't explain, but I didn't want to hear it." "Explain," I said, raising my voice. "How would you describe this? How can you explain spending months skulking about behind my back? Telling me lies and acting as like nothing was wrong?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't mind. Everything we owned had been ruined by her, and there was no way to recover from it. "Please," she said in a broken voice. "I'm so sorry. This is not what I intended to happen. It was an error." "An error?" I said it again, my tone brimming with incredulity. "One error is one time. This was no error. This was a decision you repeatedly made. I was betrayed by you. For what reason did you ruin our marriage? For him?" Her body trembled with anguish as she collapsed into the couch and cried. "I apologize." She repeated herself. However, her statements seemed vacuous. I was no longer even able to look at her. The lady I had devoted my life to and loved was no longer with me. A stranger, someone I didn't know, who had ripped my heart apart and shattered it without hesitation, took her place. I said, hardly raising my voice above a whisper, "I want you to go." Tears stained her cheeks as she gazed up at me. "Please don't do this, we can fix it," she pleaded. "I still adore you." But I didn't understand a word she said. This could not be fixed. There was no turning back. The one person I had believed would never harm me ended our marriage. I responded icily, "I don't care. You must leave." Although I didn't remain to see, she started crying more. She was left to weep by herself in the house that no longer seemed like home as I turned and went upstairs. I knew that nothing would ever be the same when it was finished. I went to our bedroom, shut the door, and flopped down on the bed. My body is numb from sadness. The one person I trusted more than anybody else betrayed me, shattering the life I had known. I came to the realization that I had lost my identity as I sat there in the quiet. My whole identity was based on our marriage and our mutual love. But now I had nothing, and that love was a lie. In an attempt to make sense of the confusion inside of me, I lay down and stared up at the ceiling. I had given everything I had to her, and she had discarded everything for someone else.